Jerry Gidel will comment again on ConnectedFarmer on the new highs over the week for corn and soybeans, but ending the week with a turnaround and the worsening conditions in South America. On Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. If you are new here, please make sure to subscribe. So Jerry, how are you today? So we are ending a week that started lower and then moved higher, and we are going low again.
Well, it's definitely an emotional up and down week, no doubt about that. The interesting thing is the focus last week was on potential rains in Argentina for the weekend, and we started out with some rains around. It really didn't go all the way into the heart of Argentina's corn and soybean area there in Santa Fe and in Cordoba, but there was some definitely good rains, and there was also some rains in Uruguay right next door. And the forecast was there at least starting on Sunday night that was going to continue. But the markets found some real footing here and started to firm back up, actually kind of led by wheat of all things. The tensions in Ukraine and Russia and over the whole issues in there in the Black Sea about uh, the impact of Russia's right now not real interested to have Ukraine be part of NATO, and so they are really pressing the button there on that. And so that situation was bubbling higher in tensions, and so wheat and corn really kind of had a good example of enthusiasm. Beans were a little reluctant there on our shortened week there on Tuesday, but they got into high gear here as the week went on, as the in general, the tensions there, and also the weather situation and the forecast that was out there last week. Thought we'd have some more rains really in pretty by the middle latter part of this week in Argentina. They were kind of postponed until this weekend, the coming up weekend, I should say. And so that was part of the feature. And then we had strong palm oil prices. We had um, ethanol bounced back in the US here on output. So we had some big demand numbers pop up in this thing to provide some additional support to corn and soybeans.
Yes, and with this increasing conflict in between Russia and Ukraine, and also with the drought worsening in South America, what do you think is melting in terms of commodities?
Well, it puts things in quite an interesting situation here. We kind of came in after the first of the year with things are uh, you know the crop in the U.S. is going to be sizable. Our demand numbers were kind of shaky, that kind of stuff, and it really starts to make things kind of interesting. If you talk about, you know, the USDA when they came through their numbers last week, of course they didn't jump down there to those 132, 133 zone, 34 zone in soybeans in South America or in Brazil, I should say, where the consultancies were at. And on the corn side, they reduced the outputs modestly, actually, in Argentina, considering the weather that was kind of happening there. And boy, the attitudes about what's really going to be produced down there are pretty substantial. There's supposedly some rumors that there's some 130s or 129s kind of numbers there on beans in the Brazil. I think that may be getting ahead of themselves a little bit on that. But and on the corn side, I really continue to be kind of surprised that considering the timing of the southern corn crops, the initial first crop situations in Paraná in Rio Grande, even maybe a little bit there in Mato Grosso do Sul, and that the timing of this thing. And the interesting twist here is that in the current forecast, still has not really put a lot of moisture into that part of South America. They're still talking about rains in the 1 to 3 inch category still coming across in Argentina. And that, so I kind of feel like the statistics on corn and soybeans on a worldwide basis are still looking to be a little bit tightened up in South America, which potentially means that we could have some expanded numbers here in the U.S. demand. The corn number was not changed last week on the U.S. on its exports, but they did take 75 million out of it took 75 million out of the corn and they left soybeans unchanged on their exports from there. And I kind of feel like that corn number could be vulnerable to some expansion here going forward. But, the Black Sea tensions are still are a big factor in here. And if there is some type of I'm not sure you want to call it stand down or some type of understanding or whatever on this situation, that could make a difference in this thing. But in general, I think this market, with the kind of activity we had of pushing out to new highs in corn and soybeans, are going to end up being a lot more sensitive to issues around the world here, particularly in two different hotspots as we know it right now: Black Sea and the issues there, and also on the South American crop conditions at this point, because both of them have a big impact here on the U.S. and the rest of the world's export potential.
Yes, the market is talking about new purchases from China.
Yes, that was some rumors a couple days ago. And we actually finally got an update on the first part of that today with the Chinese update on some soybean purchases and that. And we had a pretty sizable corn purchases unknown. There's people trying to point their finger at that being China, or they could be Mexico. In general, I think that in these kind of situations, and that when you if you're looking at demand situations and your needs out in front of you here, Mexico has been a very hefty buyer this year. They haven't been, they've been getting ahead of this thing. I'd have to say there's some other places in the world have not. And the wild thing is I've heard that Ukraine was out pushing over 1 million metric tons of corn out this week. So the exporters were feeling a little nervous that maybe they needed to get some commitments out, and they had boats there, so they moved them out. They didn't keep them in their elevators there if they got trapped in a situation where, political situations bounced up and had an impact.
And what did you see in the wheat world this week?
Well, it's really kind of tied to this whole mental attitude about what could or could not happen in the Black Sea, because of the fact that definitely world trade and grain exports kind of get shoved to the sidelines. Nobody wants to send a boat into some conflicts types of situation there. And so that's really an interesting situation. Also, there has been a slowdown with the higher taxes that's gone along here. Actually, I think they've pushed over $100 sometime over the last 10 days or so. But I saw today or yesterday that they had went ahead and actually slipped back their wheat export tax out of Russia from there, basically because the U.S. and the world prices had backed off a little bit here. But they bounced really back, so I'm not sure how long that's going to be around. And the other twist of it is that they actually increased their export tax on corn, which has been kind of slowly going up, but this time around they jumped it up over $50 to add on top of whatever you bought out of the Russian corn crop, but they're not big exporters. The Ukrainians are the big exporter of corn in the Black Sea.
And what are you expecting for next week?
That is probably the more than $1 million question for us both. That's I guess we'll determine. I guess at this point, I kind of feel like that we might have a little bit of a some slow down maybe in some of the political tensions out there. It seems like that was at least they're willing to go back and talk, and there's supposed to be some proposal being out to the Russians uh, early next week. Now, the big question is um, that I'm not sure that's they're Putin and Soviet Union, or excuse me, Russia really are looking for a one of these don't ever mess with us for 10 or 20 years type situation. I don't know that the U.S. is going to make anything like that. So that makes it interesting. And then we've got this whole weather situation, but the technicals right now, breaking out the new highs, suggests that there will be some support on setbacks, and weather is going to continue to be important in South America, what does or does not happen. I know that some of the people looking at longer term things are starting to look at the La Nina, saying, oh, it could looks like it's starting to lessen some stuff out there in the Pacific Ocean. But sometimes it takes a while for the weather trends to make a huge change in that. And right now, if we're on to problems in Argentina through February, things could get quite interesting here in their output. They started out with ideas of 55, 57 million metric tons. And if we had something that would take us down over a 10 million there, that means interesting situation for the world corn supplies. And on the and at this point, soybean prospects also are highly important in Argentina. So weather is surprisingly a tough one. I'd have to say that I'd anticipate a choppiness with some support on setbacks, and the market kind of continue to be highly nervous going here. And the potential, technically, if you take this thing hangs in here above $6, we could see March corn move up to the 640, 650 zone, and soybeans with the $14 mark here kind of breached and new highs, and that we could end up seeing that moving up into the 1460 to 1480 range along the way. So, there's a technical kind of levels. Like there's no guarantees we're going to see anything right now with the things kind of in the emotional set of circumstances here in the Black Sea.
All right. Thank you so much and have a great week.
You bet. Take care, and hopefully we keep your finger on the pulse of the world right now. It seems to be an interesting world at this point.